My name is Maya. I'm 32 years old, and I've spent the last 13 years of my life trying to erase the version of me my family used to mock. The quiet one. The weird one. The one who would never make it because I didn't follow their script. I was the middle child, wedged between my older sister Jenna, the golden girl who got a sports scholarship and later joined Dad's real estate firm, and my younger brother Evan, who could crash the car and still get a hug and a "you're just tired, sweetheart." Me? I kept to myself. I liked computers. I liked silence. Most of all, I liked being left alone. That didn't fly in our house. Mom never understood me. Dad barely acknowledged I existed. And Jenna treated me like her personal assistant until the day I finally pushed back. That happened when I was 19. I'd just finished my first year of community college and landed an internship at a small tech startup. I was excited, the kind of excited that makes you run home to tell your parents because, for once, you feel like maybe, just maybe, you're starting to become someone. I still remember walking into the kitchen that night, holding the offer letter in my hand. Jenna was sprawled on the couch with a half-eaten sandwich, complaining that her boyfriend hadn't texted her back. I told them the news, how they'd picked me over 3 university grads, how I'd be working on real products that were already getting investor attention. Mom looked up from the sink, barely interested. "Is it paid?" she asked flatly. "It's not," I admitted. "But it's temporary. It could turn into a full-time role." "Well, we're not paying for your gas just so you can go play computer games," she said. Dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. "Waste of time. Get a real job," he muttered. That was the beginning of the end. I tried to stick it out. I picked up evening shifts at a grocery store to cover costs. Rode a beat-up bike 5 miles each way to the office. Jenna still tossed her laundry at me, asked me to fix her laptop, and called me names when I refused, but I believed in that internship. I believed it would lead somewhere. Then, one Friday night, I came home to find my stuff boxed up in the living room. I thought it was a mistake. "What's going on?" I asked. "Mom?" She didn't even blink. "You're moving out," she said as casually as if she were reading a shopping list. "You're an adult now. Time to stop freeloading. We need the space for Jenna's baby." That was the first I'd heard she was pregnant. I looked at Dad, stunned. "You had your chance," he said, his voice cold. "We supported your little fantasy long enough. Time to grow up." That night, I slept in my car. I crashed on couches for a while after that. Friends from college helped when they could. I showered at gyms, lived on dollar menu burgers. But I never quit that internship. I kept showing up every day, exhausted but determined. When the company landed its first major round of funding, they offered me a real job. Not glamorous, just back-end development, but to me, it felt like gold. The years that followed weren't easy. I worked like a machine. No vacations. No weekends. Every bonus went into savings. Every raise got reinvested into myself, learning, building, networking. I moved to a new city. Changed my number. Cut off all contact. By 29, I was working for a major tech firm in San Francisco, building security infrastructure. At 30, I co-founded a startup with 2 former colleagues. And 18 months later, we were acquired for just under $40 million. After taxes and equity splits, I walked away with just over $2 million. No, I didn't throw a party. I didn't post about it. I just exhaled. I bought a house in the Bay Area, sleek, modern, 4 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling glass, rooftop deck, panoramic city view. It cost a little over $1 million. But to me, it wasn't just a house. It was proof. Proof that the girl they cast aside had made it. Then I made the mistake of inviting them to the housewarming. I don't know what I was thinking. Guilt, maybe. Curiosity. I hadn't spoken to any of them in years. The last I heard was a blurry photo Jenna had texted her kid, with the message, "Just in case you want to know your nephew." I ignored it. But part of me wanted to see. To see if maybe they'd changed. If maybe, just maybe, they'd apologize. I didn't expect a tearful reunion. Just something human. A nod. We were wrong. Instead, Jenna showed up in heels. Too high for my floors, dragging 2 screaming kids through the front door like she owned the place. She didn't even say hi. Just looked around with a smug little smirk and said, "Wow. This $1 million house has plenty of room for me and the kids." I blinked. "What?" She waved toward the door where Mom was already making herself at home in my kitchen. "Well, you invited us, and you've got all this space," Jenna said. "We thought we'd stay for a bit, just until I find a place." My jaw dropped, then Mom chimed in, using that same syrupy, patronizing tone I hadn't heard in over a decade. "Be a good sister, Maya. Let her stay. She's been through a lot." I just stood there, stunned. At the entitlement. The assumption. The casual way they acted like I owed them something. Like the years of silence, of abandonment, of struggle, meant nothing. Like I was still that quiet middle child, desperate for a scrap of approval. That's when I smiled. I pulled out my phone, opened the deed, and said it slowly, like every word was a hammer hitting concrete. Remember when you threw me out at 19? I bought this house with the bonus I got after leaving all of you behind. The room went dead silent. Jenna's jaw tightened. Mom blinked. The kids were still whining, but I barely heard them, and just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Dad walked through the front door. He glanced around, took in the house, then locked eyes with me. Nice place, he said. I nodded. You did all right. It wasn't a compliment. It was an assessment. Like he was already calculating what he could get from it. That was the moment I realized they didn't come to reconnect. They came because they thought they still had a claim. They thought I still belonged to them. They were wrong. I didn't kick them out right away. Looking back, I don't know why. Maybe part of me wanted to see how far they'd take it. Maybe I still needed proof, something so undeniable and grotesque that even the most stubborn part of me couldn't excuse them anymore. Or maybe I was still hoping they'd stop themselves. That they'd recognize how far gone they were and apologize. They didn't. Things escalated fast. Jenna immediately started acting like the house was hers. The kids can take that room, she said, pointing at my guest bedroom, the one with the ensuite and a view of the hills. Oh, and I'll take the one across from it. I need to be close to them at night. Then, as if she were doing me a favor, she added, don't worry, we won't be here long. Just a few weeks. Maybe 2 months, max. I said nothing. Just watched her unpack like she was settling into a resort. Her kids tracked mud through the living room. She didn't ask to stay. She announced it. Claimed it. Meanwhile, Mom found the wine I'd bought for the party, poured herself a glass without asking. You always had expensive taste, she said, swirling it like she was a wine critic. Maybe now that you've done so well, you'll understand how hard it was raising 3 kids. 4, I said quietly. She blinked. What? You forgot David, I added. My little brother. The one who OD'd at 17. The one none of you ever talked about again. Not at the funeral. Not in therapy. Not once. She made a face like I'd brought up something rude at dinner. That was a long time ago. No point dredging up the past. I stared at her, wondering if she even realized how twisted that sounded. Dad, of course, didn't bother with pleasantries. He was already surveying the backyard like it was a listing he might flip. You should put in a pool, he said. It'll up the resale value. That shed, tear it down. Looks cheap. That's when I finally asked, why are you really here? He turned and smiled, salesman slick. Families should stick together. Especially now that you're successful. There it was. Not even subtle. That night, they stayed. Even though every bone in my body told me to end it, I let them stay. I watched Jenna set up her kids' iPads in my living room, cranking the volume. I listened to Mom criticize my furniture, too modern, too sterile. Dad even suggested he manage my finances. Real estate's always safer than tech stocks, he said. They didn't come to visit. They came to move in. Day 2, the manipulation started. Jenna knocked on my office door like she cared. I know this is a lot, Maya, she said softly. But I really need your help. Child support's been hell. Daycare costs are insane. If I could just stay a few more months, I promise I'll get back on my feet. I looked her dead in the eyes. And what are you actually doing to get back on your feet? She blinked like I'd spoken another language. Well, I'm taking time for my mental health right now. It's been rough. You've been posting spa selfies all week, I said flatly. Her expression turned venomous. Wow. So that's how you see me? No, Jenna, I said, leaning back. That's how the internet sees you. She stormed off. 5 minutes later, Mom appeared. You really need to learn empathy, she scolded. She's your sister. And those kids are your family. What happened to you? What happened? I repeated. You kicked me out. You didn't speak to me for years. That's not fair, she snapped. We were trying to teach you responsibility. You didn't teach me responsibility, I said. You taught me survival. And I learned it without you. She scoffed and left. That night, dinner was unbearable. Jenna refused to look at me. Mom complained about the food. The kids screamed and threw rice across the table. And Dad pulled me aside, like we were about to have some deep moment. I know this is overwhelming, he said in that same fake deep voice. But you're in a position to help. It's what good daughters do. You can afford it. Why not let us stay a while? You've got the space. I'm not a hotel, I said. Then stop acting like a stranger, he snapped. That's when it clicked. They weren't just entitled, they thought this was already theirs. They'd already won. Jenna always had someone cleaning up after her. Mom guilt her way through conflict. Dad only offered approval when obedience was guaranteed, and they thought I was still that same desperate girl. craving affection. So I stopped pushing back. I let them think they'd won. I let Jenna fill the fridge with oat milk and overpriced snacks. Let mom rearrange my spice rack. Let dad take calls from my backyard like it was his personal office, all while I quietly collected receipts, screenshots, video, audio, because if they were going to try to stake a claim on my home, they were going to do it while I built my case, and what I had planned next, they'd never see it coming. Everything came to a head exactly 12 days after they arrived. By then, they were fully settled in, like squatters who'd signed a lease in invisible ink. Jenna was having groceries delivered to my address and charging them to my account. I found out when I got a notification for a $174 Whole Foods order I never placed. My father had somehow convinced one of my neighbors that he owned the house and had started giving unsolicited advice to the HOA, like some kind of self-appointed community elder. And Mom used every quiet moment to remind me that I'd be alone forever if I didn't start acting like a normal woman. The manipulation wasn't even subtle anymore, it was ambient, like a background noise I couldn't turn off. It felt like the house itself was starting to rot from the inside out with their presence. That Monday morning, I was working in my home office when I heard a knock at the front door. Figuring it was a delivery, I ignored it at first. A few minutes later, unfamiliar voices floated down the hallway. I got up and walked over, cautious, and saw two men in gray polos talking to my mother by the entryway point. One of them turned to me. "Hi, are you the homeowner?" I nodded slowly. "Yes. We're from Everlux Home Staging. We were called to take measurements for the upcoming listing." I blinked. "Listing?" He double-checked his clipboard. "Yes, we were told. The property is going on the market next month." I turned to my mother, whose face had gone pale and stiff. "Excuse me?" I asked more sharply this time. "Who scheduled you?" Let me check," the man said, flipping through his notes. "Vanessa Trent. That's Jenna's full name." She said she was handling the listing paperwork. And then Jenna walked in from the kitchen, holding her coffee like it was just another Tuesday. "Oh," she said lightly. "I was going to tell you. We're putting the house on the market." "We?" I repeated, stunned. "Well, you work all the time," she said in that sing-song, mock-sweet tone she used as a teenager. "You barely use the space." And Mom and Dad agreed. "You'd be better off downsizing, maybe something closer to the city. This house is kind of wasted on you." My jaw dropped. "Are you out of your mind?" "It's what's best for everyone," Mom chimed in gently, like she was talking to a toddler. "You're overextended. You're not married. You don't need all this space. Jenna needs stability. This house is perfect for the kids." I nearly laughed. "This isn't a shared inheritance. I bought this house. With my money. My name is the only one on the deed." Dad appeared at that moment, leaning against the wall like some cartoon mob boss. "You're being dramatic," he said. "It's just a house. If it helps the family, that's what should matter." "And if it bankrupts me?" I asked. "What then?" He shrugged. "You're smart. You'll bounce back." I turned to Jenna. "And what exactly do you get out of this?" She didn't flinch. "The house gets listed, we use the proceeds to get me a new place for me and the kids. And you get peace of mind. Honestly, it's a win-win." Something inside me snapped, not in anger, but something deeper. Like the last thread of hope finally severing. "You really think you can sell my house?" I asked slowly. "I already called a realtor," she said. "She's coming tomorrow to take photos." "You're trespassing," I said. "We're family," Mom snapped. "We have every right to be here." That was it. I walked into the kitchen without a word, grabbed my phone, and opened my security system app. I'd installed cameras just after they moved in, 2 inside, 1 in the front yard, 1 by the garage. I pulled 5 clear video clips from the folder marked incidents and sent them to my email. I didn't say anything I didn't need to later. That afternoon, I got a call from my bank. Someone had tried accessing my mortgage account. Multiple failed login attempts had triggered a fraud alert. The rep asked if I knew a Vanessa Trent. I thanked him and hung up. That night, I barely touched my dinner. My family acted like nothing had happened. Like they hadn't tried to sell the roof over my head. Like they hadn't just committed fraud. Then Jenna looked up from her phone and smiled like it was a normal Tuesday. "I was thinking," she said. "We could paint the living room before the photographer comes. Brighten it up a bit." I stared at her. Then at Mom. Then at Dad, and I realized, they didn't see me as a person. I was a resource. A stepping stone. A vessel to be drained. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't trapped in this situation with them, they were trapped in here with me. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was scared, though I'd be lying if I said I wasn't, but because something inside me had finally shifted. Completely. The house I once saw as a symbol of freedom, the reward for years of grit and solitude, now felt like a cage. Every corner echoed with their voices, their footsteps, their utter disregard for me. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring into the dark, replaying every word from that day. We're putting the house on the market. We have every right to be here. You get peace of mind. I felt like a guest in my own home. The next morning, I woke to yelling. Jenna's oldest had spilled orange juice on the white rug in the living room, the one I'd bought with my first real paycheck, the one I kept pristine for years. Jenna was screaming at him like he'd smashed a priceless sculpture. Then she grabbed one of my bath towels to clean it. Maybe don't buy white rugs if you plan on having family over, she said, not even looking at me. I didn't answer. I just turned around, walked back into my room, and shut the door. That was the moment I decided I was done playing defense, but before I could act, things got worse. 2 days later, I came home after a long day at the office. I'd been staying late just to avoid them, and walked into my home office to find everything rearranged. My triple monitor setup was unplugged. My work files shoved into a drawer. In its place, a foldable crib. Jenna appeared in the doorway like she'd rehearsed the whole thing. The baby's been fussy, she said. He needs a quiet place to nap during the day. The living room's too noisy. You turned my office into a nursery? I asked, my voice shaking. You can work in your room, she said, like it was the obvious solution. You've got that little desk by the window, right? You went through my things. Don't be dramatic. It's my house, too, now. We all need to make compromises. I couldn't even speak. I just walked to the bathroom, locked the door, sat down on the toilet lid, and stared at the tile. My hands were trembling. I didn't know if I was going to cry or scream or completely fall apart. Instead, I pulled out my phone and opened notes. I started making a list. A calm, detailed list. Every violation, every overreach, every lie, Whole Foods charges, realtor appointment, attempted mortgage login, my office being converted. The attempted sale of my house. Then I started documenting everything in real time. I hid an AirTag inside a living room lamp to track movement. Enabled continuous camera backups. Recorded every conversation on my phone, even the ones that seemed harmless. Not for them. For me. For the part of me that still needed proof. That still doubted if maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe I was exaggerating. Maybe there was something worth salvaging. That illusion shattered completely about a week later. It was 11:30 p.m. I'd just come back from a long walk, needed air, quiet, perspective. When I stepped into the house, I heard Jenna's voice in the kitchen. She was on the phone laughing. Yeah, girl, she said. He's such a loser. Can you believe he actually let us stay here? Like, for free? I swear, he's always been like this. So desperate for love. He'll put up with anything. She laughed again. I give it 2 more months. We'll get that down payment. He'll fold. He always does. I froze, not because of what she said. I'd already suspected it, but how she said it. The casual confidence. Like it wasn't a guess. It was a pattern. One she'd used before, and I realized she didn't think I would ever fight back. Not her. Not mom. Not dad. They still saw me as the same girl they threw out at 19. They thought this was temporary. That eventually, I'd cave. That the woman I'd become, the one who survived, built, and thrived, was just a phase. They were wrong, but I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I did something I should have done years ago. The next morning, I took a day off work and drove 2 hours up the coast to a rocky overlook I used to visit in college. A small bench. No cell signal. Just sky and sea and space to breathe. I sat there for hours, letting the noise drain out of me, and when I finally climbed back into my car, I wasn't angry. I was ready, not for a fight, for freedom. When I got back home that evening, something inside me had settled. I felt calm in a way I hadn't in years. The confusion was gone. The guilt, the tug-of-war between obligation and survival, all of it just cleared. I didn't owe them anything, and once I accepted that, everything clicked into place. The first move was quiet. I reprogrammed the garage code. Removed every device except mine from the security app. No confrontation. No announcement. Just a silent boundary. That same night, I called my lawyer, someone I hadn't spoken to since the startup acquisition, but who had once said, if your past ever tries to come back for your future, call me. Well, I said dryly, they're not just knocking, they've moved in, stolen my office, and tried to sell my house. She didn't laugh. She gave me a list. A very precise, legal, bulletproof list. I got to work. I filed formal trespass warnings with the city. Because even though I'd let them in initially, their continued presence, especially after the attempted home sale, now qualified as unlawful occupancy. I froze all shared financial accounts and opened new ones with biometric verification. I hired a private security consultant to install a reinforced locking system on my bedroom, one that would silently send alerts if tampered with. I brought in a financial investigator. Not for me, for Jenna. I wanted to know where her money was going, how she was affording spa days and shopping hauls while pleading poverty. Turns out she had multiple payday loan defaults and a minor fraud charge pending in another state. Not a smoking gun, but enough to prove she wasn't just reckless. She was dangerous. Meanwhile, at work, my life was leveling up. A cybersecurity tool I'd quietly been building over the past year caught the CTO's attention. It became the foundation of a massive new partnership with a global firm. My name was on the press release. Stock options spiked. Bonuses hit. For the first time in months, I actually looked forward to waking up. I even got invited to speak at a panel in Chicago. I said yes. When I mentioned to Jenna that I'd be gone for the weekend, she didn't even blink. Ooh, bring me back something cute, she said. A blanket or candle, you know, the stuff they sell at those airport shops. While I was gone, I had Daniel house sit. He was a quiet, brilliant engineer from my team who loved dogs and hated drama. The perfect candidate. He texted me twice, once to say Jenna asked him to babysit. The second time to say she'd tried to get into my office. He locked the door and stood guard. I promised him a month of free coffee. When I returned, something unexpected was waiting for me. An offer. A rival firm in Seattle had seen the press from the panel and reached out. They wanted me as their new head of information security, executive level. It came with a relocation package, a massive signing bonus, and best of all, housing assistance. I could buy another home up north, and keep this one as a rental property. I hadn't even applied. They came to me. The power shift was complete. While my family was still playing house, I'd been building an exit, and it was going to be clean, quiet, irreversible, because I didn't want revenge. I wanted freedom, and they'd never see it coming. I didn't accept the Seattle offer right away, not because I was unsure, but because I was preparing to use it. Before I made anything official, I needed every loose end tied down, every document aligned, every record airtight, especially my narrative. That's when something happened that changed everything. It started with a call to my HOA. I just needed to confirm I'd be allowed to rent out the property if I moved. Routine. Simple. The woman on the other end, Marlene, was sweet and chatty. When I mentioned that my family was staying with me temporarily, she laughed. Oh yes, your parents and sister already introduced themselves at the last board meeting. I froze. Board meeting? Oh yes, she said brightly. It was a few days after your housewarming. They mentioned that you travel for work a lot and that they're helping manage the property. My stomach dropped. I asked her to clarify. Marlene kindly pulled up the meeting notes. Apparently, Jenna had filed a request for a temporary occupancy variance, citing extended family cohabitation. My parents had supported the claim. The board, seeing my name on the deed, had approved it. I thanked her and hung up. Then I logged into the HOA portal. There it was. A PDF, uploaded 3 weeks earlier, temporary family occupancy addendum. Digitally signed, with my name, except I never signed it. Not in ink. Not electronically. It was forged, and just like that, every little red flag lit up at once. The mortgage login attempts, the home stager appointment, the casual questions about my work travel. The fake conversations with the HOA. They weren't just freeloading, they were laying the groundwork to take my house, legally. If something had happened to me, an accident, an illness, they might have argued for shared ownership. Caretaker status. And it was just plausible enough to work in probate court. Jenna was always crafty. In the worst way. I forwarded the document to my lawyer. Her response came within minutes. This is actionable. I'm contacting a forensic document expert and preparing a civil claim for fraud and identity misrepresentation. Now I had ammunition and leverage. Jenna still had an unresolved fraud case in another state, and if I filed new charges, her bail agreement would be in jeopardy. One call, and she wouldn't be watching TV on my couch anymore. She'd be watching a clock on a jail wall, but I wasn't going to call. Not yet, not until every piece was in place. I began orchestrating the last phase of my exit. I hired a realtor, my own, not Jenna's. I had her schedule a private showing of the house under the name of a shell company I had just formed, Everwatch Holdings LLC. On paper, the house was being sold to a third party. In reality, I still owned it, just through a legal veil. If anyone tried to pull anything later, they'd be going after a faceless entity, not me. I wanted them to hit nothing but air. Next, I accepted the Seattle job offer. I negotiated a start date 2 months out. That gave me time to execute everything with surgical precision. Then I hired a property manager. Someone local. Someone strict. We met for coffee, and I told him everything, the forged documents, the freeloading, the manipulation. He didn't flinch. I want zero tolerance, I said. I don't want a single call about them once I leave. He agreed, and offered to be present for the final transition. Then came my favorite part. I compiled everything, copies of the forged HOA document, voice recordings of Jenna bragging to her friend Tara about selling the house, screenshots of her pending fraud case, bank alerts, video footage of her announcing the sale. I printed it all, then bound it, and slipped a cover page on top, my house. My name. My rules. It wasn't revenge. It was truth. The last thing they'd see before the locks changed, the morning it all came together, was eerily quiet, still, like the house was holding its breath. I got up early, brewed coffee, stood in the kitchen like it was just another weekday. Jenna was scrolling through her phone at the dining table, one leg tucked under her like she owned the place. "You're up early," she muttered. I smiled. "Just figured I'd enjoy the peace while it lasts." She grunted and went back to doom scrolling. She had no idea it was her last morning in my home. At 9 a.m. sharp, the doorbell rang. 3 people stood outside: Greg, my property manager; Janine, a legal rep from my attorney's office; Mark, the locksmith. I opened the door casually, like I'd ordered a delivery. Jenna appeared behind me, frowning. "Who are they?" Greg stepped forward, clipboard in hand. "Property inspection. We're doing a walkthrough before the new tenants move in." Jenna blinked. "New tenants?" I turned to her, calm. "Right. I sold the house last week." Silence. "You what?" she hissed. "I sold it," I repeated. "Well, technically, I transferred ownership to a holding company I control. But legally, it's no longer mine. It's managed by Everwatch Holdings LLC. Her eyes darted to Greg. "That's not legal. You can't just, this is our home." I reached under the counter and gently placed the packet in front of her. She flipped it open. She froze when she reached the HOA document, with her forged signature. "I never." "You did," I cut her off. "And I have proof. IP logs. Timestamps. Audio of you telling your friend Tara, who, by the way, posted part of that phone call to her Instagram story. Nice work." She paled. Mom came down the stairs, rubbing her eyes. "What's all this noise?" she asked. Greg stepped in. "Ma'am, I'm the new property manager for Everwatch Holdings. This home is no longer available for personal occupancy. You are being formally notified to vacate within 24 hours. Mom scoffed. "Excuse me? This is our daughter's house." I turned to her. "Correction, was my house. Now it belongs to a company. And you're trespassing." Dad followed a moment later, grumbling. "What the hell is going on?" "I sold the house," I said for the third and final time. "And all of you need to leave?" He looked around, confused, then furious. "You ungrateful little." Janine calmly opened her folder. "Sir, before you continue, I'm serving you and your family members a cease and desist regarding fraudulent representation of property ownership. We've also filed preliminary charges for forgery and impersonation with the local precinct. You are advised to seek counsel." Mom exploded. "He's our daughter. You can't do this." Greg didn't flinch. "You're squatters. And under the law, that means your relationship does not grant you residency. You weren't on the lease. You weren't granted long-term occupancy. And you attempted to sell property that wasn't yours." Jenna was pacing now, panicked. "Where are we supposed to go? What about the kids?" I shrugged. "You should have thought about that before you tried to steal my life." Mark, the locksmith, looked at me. "Should I begin?" I nodded. "Change them all." That's when the chaos began. Jenna was shouting at her kids to grab their things. Mom was crying about how heartless I'd become. Dad stood frozen, arms folded, realizing, for the first time, that he wasn't in charge. The same woman who once laughed at my computer job was now begging me not to ruin her daughter's life. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't argue. I just stepped outside onto the porch and let the locksmith work. Within 2 hours, they were gone, the bags hastily packed. Kids crying. Parents stunned. Jenna tried one last time. "We're family," she whispered. "You'll regret this." I walked over to the car, leaned down to her window, and said calmly, "I already did. For 19 years. Then I turned, walked back inside, and shut the door behind me. The weeks that followed were quiet, and I cherished every second. Jenna tried to retaliate. She posted vague, dramatic stories about evil siblings and being abandoned by blood. She even launched a GoFundMe, claiming she and her kids had been made homeless by a selfish tech bro. It raised $62. Someone commented with a link to her court records. The post disappeared by morning. Mom called once. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail sobbing about how I'd ripped the family apart. I played it once, then deleted it. I knew it wasn't grief. It was the sound of control being lost. Dad never called. Of course he didn't. 3 months later, I moved into my new home in Seattle. A high-rise corner unit. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Overlooking the Sound. I kept the Bay Area house under Everwatch Holdings. Rented it to a newlywed couple with 2 dogs and 0 entitlement. They send me holiday cards now. At work, my title changed from head of security to chief of security. My team doubled. My income did too. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to apologize for my success. I didn't shrink myself to make others feel bigger. I finally understood the most valuable lesson I've ever learned: family isn't blood. It's boundaries. It's respect. It's choice. As for Jenna, she took a plea deal. Community service. A year of probation. Mandatory financial counseling. Last I heard, she's in a small apartment with her kids, barely scraping by. It's not what I wanted for her. I never wanted to ruin her life. I just wanted her out of mine, and I got exactly that point one evening. As the Seattle sky glowed gold, I sat on my balcony with a warm cup of coffee. I thought about everything: the betrayal, the silence, the years I spent trying to prove I was worth loving. Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Hope. You're happy. We lost everything. I didn't respond. I just smiled, turned off my phone, and whispered to the wind, no. I finally found everything I needed.